Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. As always, I am your host, Whitney Clark, and it is one of my favorite seasons, not because of the weather. In Phoenix, we don't like that. It's about to get way too hot in the Valley of the Sun. But this time of year, we always get treated to some really incredibly cozy and special summer reads. And today we're joined by one of the authors who is so incredibly great at that. And I just loved her new book. We're joined today by Annabel Monaghan. She's out with a new book called It's a Love Story. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As I mentioned, it is warm already in Phoenix. You got a sweater on because it's cold in Connecticut.
No, it is. It's like it's unseasonably cold, and it's all anybody's talking about. You would think it's never been 50 degrees before in Connecticut, but we are just like, it's Memorial Day weekend. This is not how we wanted to dress.
Well, that is certainly something, and certainly a lot different than the weather that we have in Phoenix. But as I mentioned, I love this time of year. I loved your new book, It's a Love Story. So tell readers a little bit about what they can expect.
So it is the story of Jane Jackson, who is a former teen star. So she was on this show where a bunch of teenagers were at high school together and they formed a band. And she was the punchline of every joke. You know, she was the one that got the milkshake to the face or sat in a pile of nachos at the end of the show and everybody laughs. Well, she's all grown up now, and she's trying to finally be taken seriously in Hollywood. She is a producer. She's trying to get her first project greenlit, and it's about to happen. This is like the thing that's going to put her on the map. And as her project starts to fall apart, she panics and tells a huge lie just to buy herself a little bit of time. And she needs to spend the rest of the book trying to make that lie true so that she can get this project greenlit. And the only way she can do that is by relying on the one guy who she really cannot stand. And he is Dan Finnegan. And he is very cute.
And they have a bit of a meet cute. That's the trope we would use here, correct?
Yes. Yes. They have met before, and they were actually going to go on a date. And then he turns up and is just the thing that ruins her project. But she needs his help to get it all fixed.
What inspired you to write this story?
You know, I actually had no idea what I was going to start writing about. I had just finished writing my prior book, and I picked up Jennette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died. And did you read that book?
I did. I actually listened to the audiobook, which was incredible because she read it herself. So
yeah, I maybe couldn't have done that. That might have hit me too hard.
Yeah.
Anyways, I loved it. And I actually read it twice in a row, like a total lunatic. And what stayed with me is just thinking about these teen stars, you know, the ones that I grew up watching, the ones that my kids grew up watching, and what it must have been like to really grow up on TV, you know, go through puberty on TV. And during a time that I was like kind of experimenting with who I was, like what a strange thing to be put in a costume, read from a script, be told where to stand and what kind of a person you are. And I just thought a lot about that character, like how she might grow up, really having no idea who she is. And that's really all I started with the book, is this sort of unhinged adult woman who is really unself-aware. And I wanted to put her on a journey to kind of figure out her own worthiness.
What surprised you the most about Jennette's memoir?
Oh, you know, I don't know why. I hope this isn't like sound snobby or something, but why is she such a good writer? Like, she didn't study her whole life to be a writer. The writing of that story, I would have to stop and reread a paragraph because it just it was so perfect. Anyways, that was the thing that surprised me the most. And then just the pain, you know, while we were all watching and we were all laughing, just, you know, the pain that she was suffering.
Yeah, Jane really struggles with feeling like she's not enough. She struggles with her self-worth. That really kind of comes to the head towards the end of the book, which, of course, we're not going to give any spoilers here. What was it like for you to really explore that?
It took me a really long time. It took me a long time to get to it. Like, I had this feeling like she's really broken. Like, this is not like there's something in her, and it was like kind of was like deep in me, and it took me a long time to rattle it out, what it really was, that has made her this way. But and I had to sort of explore. Well, you have to be really honest with yourself when you're writing a book, otherwise, like, your feelings don't get in there. I had to really explore like a lot of beliefs that I've had about myself my entire life, and ask myself where I got those beliefs. Because that's what I'm asking Jane to do in this book, is like, she believes that she's unworthy. Like, where did that come from? And why do we trust all the things we hear in our childhood as gospel truth? We sort of need to look at those things.
Yeah, certainly so. And one thing I really loved in this book was the relationship between Jane and her mom. And they had this really special tradition of going to the movies together every week. Do you have a tradition, or did you have a tradition with your kids growing up or in your family like this?
Well, in the summer, we always eat dinner together on a Sunday. And in the summer, we do that outside at the beach, and we pack a picnic, and it's a lot of work, and it's totally worth it. And we play cards, and we kind of talk about the same things. That's like a touchstone moment that I always rely on. Now my kids are grown, so I try to get them back for a dinner like that every once in a while.
Yeah. How much of your own life comes out in your books?
It's so little of my life, like my actual things in my life, but it's all my feelings. So it's like I will write a character that has some kind of a trauma or an upset. And it's not the trauma or upset that I have, but it's the same kind of a feeling. And if I can't get there with the feeling when I'm writing, it doesn't really work. So I have to kind of mind my own stuff and bring it up onto the page.
Yeah. How do you sort of do that and also balance, your own mental health, protect your own peace and your own mental well-being?
I don't know. I'm older. Like, I just feel like I've kind of sorted through all my stuff. Like, I don't have any secrets from myself anymore. So when I bring up my stuff, I look at it and I'm like, oh, I remember that. So I don't know. It does. And also, like, I write with a very light touch. When I say this book is inspired by Jennette McCurdy's story, like, there's none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of the feeling of it. So it's in the writing of it, I kind of, make it a little bit lighter.
One of my favorite parts of this book too also was the relationship between Dan's parents, Rini and Cormac, and sort of their love for each other and this idea that they share that love happens over breakfast. What does that mean to you? Kind of how did that idea come to you?
That means everything to me. And if you're asking, do I put any of my life into my books? Yes, I guess I do. So I've been married almost 30 years. And, I grew up watching all the movies where the grand gesture happens and, the man rides in the parade and gets down on one knee and all that kind of stuff. After all of the years I've been married, I just don't think that's what love is as I've experienced it. It's much quieter than that. It's showing up, it's refilling something in the fridge, it's putting the registration on my sticker on my car.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the small ways that we take care of each other, that really is like the kind of love that I didn't know that I would experience in my lifetime. And I wanted to write about that. Because Jane doesn't really believe in love. She thinks it's nonsense. And her mother is constantly in search of like the big romantic thing, like, let's take a helicopter ride. And I wanted to show her in a quiet way, just that other kind of like where you're just there for each other all the time. And that I really enjoyed writing about that because it makes me feel very lucky.
Yeah. How did you and your husband meet?
We met in business school. We were in school together. We met our second year, and 6 months later, we were engaged. It was like one of those things.
Yeah, I love that. What's your advice to people who might be looking to find those little things in their relationship, like Rini and Cormac?
I I love that you asked me that. No one ever asks me for dating advice. I think it's really important to look past the thing you think you're supposed to look for, to the small habits that people have and the way they treat you. You can't fake kindness. Like if someone's mean, there's no way around that over time. So you look for the things, maybe a sense of humor if that's important to you, but just like the kindness that's going to have some staying power, because all the jazzy stuff kind of gets muted over the years.
Yeah, it certainly does. I love that. I'm a romantic, and I understand that you're also a romantic. And
Sure.
I did read that you've saved every love letter you've ever received.
True.
Yeah. How did that start? Where do you keep them? How does that work?
It's funny. I just moved, so I'm not 100% sure where they are, but I did keep them.
Yeah.
I think that started because the first time I got one, I was maybe like 10 years old. And I was like, I'll probably never get a love letter again my whole life.
Oh.
I should keep, it was a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And then by the time I mean, trust me, this is not like treasure troves of love letters. I probably have 12.
Yeah.
But I think that was it. It was like, this is probably the last one. So I kept it.
I love that. And there's something so special about an actual handwritten love letter.
There is. There's so much of a person that goes into their handwriting. Were they nervous? Were they fluid? Were they loopy? If you saw my handwriting, you'd think I needed to be in an institution. I have the craziest handwriting. But it kind of brings back a memory when you see someone's handwriting.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of writing this book?
So this is my fourth book. And all of my main characters were people that presented to the world in a very kind of orderly way. Like they're working through stuff, but they're not unhinged the way Jane is. And it was very fun for me to just go there. Like, yes, we're stressed out and we're going to sit under the desk in the dark and eat chocolate. Like she's so kind of nuts. That it just felt very freeing for me to write about her, like the things that would come out of her mouth or the way she'd lose her temper. I liked being unleashed for a while.
I think we all have our emergency candy supplies somewhere.
I think we all have it, and it might not even be candy, but it's something.
Yeah.
It's like that thing that is a little bit shameful that you do to comfort yourself. More often than not, I bet it's chocolate. But yes, I think that we all do. And I was worried while I was writing this, because she is so unhinged, that she would be completely unrelatable to readers. But I've been surprised to hear from readers that she's the most relatable character yet, that we all have these thoughts about ourselves and doubts.
I felt like she was extremely relatable, in particular when it comes to just her feeling of self-worth. I think, shame, I feel like, was another thing that came up a lot when it came to her and when it came to her past. So let's talk a little bit about her and Dan and sort of their dynamic and what inspired Dan as a character.
So I love a quiet man. I really do. I just love, I love a man you can rely on who's not trying to sell you anything. I find that very appealing. And that's kind of how Dan presented himself to me. And he is a person who comes from a very big, very loud family, who is a quiet person, and he knows who he is. So he has this strength about him that he never had to sort of bend to his family to become like them. Like, he's just his own guy and he knows who he is. He was a really good foil for Jane, who literally has no idea who she is. Like, she thinks she needs to dress up like Reese Witherspoon to get a date. Mm-hmm. She just is so out of touch with herself. And I loved having her just kind of like flying around in her crazy way, and Dan just like being so solid.
Yeah. And he's so sure of himself too.
He is. He's sure of himself, but he's also like probably doesn't have health insurance and his car's going to break. And it's not like he has his whole life totally together, but he knows who he is.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
there's something so attractive about that to me.
And he also is an attractive man, and so are his brothers and everyone in his family. And one of the things I loved reading was about his big family, how they interacted with each other. Their gatherings sounded so fun. Did you come from a big family? What was it like, sort of in your home with your sons growing up?
So I didn't come from a big family. I have three sons. So we're a family of five. When we're all together, it is all a lot of it's a lot of talking. Like they talk about sports so much that I sometimes tune out. But there is this other kind of family that I have observed and I've always wanted to write about, where there are maybe five kids. There's like tons of kids. So every time they get together, it's like a dinner party. And everybody is extroverted and kind of leads with an insult, but it's very lighthearted. So you just are like, look at you, whatever it is. And so nothing's held back. And there's not that, that really noisy, unsaid thing in a family.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any of that. It's like everything's just said. So nobody feels ashamed or worried, or it's like, yeah, here it is all out there. I love the idea of a family like that. And that's where Dan's family came from. I just wanted to put them all at the table and have them all tell embarrassing stories about each other and flirt with each other's girlfriends and just have at it.
And it was very different than Nora's family. And I'm sorry, I said Nora because that was from your first book. I meant Jane.
Thank you for knowing my first book.
I loved that book too, by the way. I'm so sorry. I meant Jane. Very different than Jane's family. How does Jane feel when she interacts with Dan's family at first? Like, what were some of her big takeaways? What was that experience like for her when you were writing her character?
Well, I think that at first it was sort of terrifying. Like she just walked into like a rock concert. Like why are there so many people here? Why is this so loud? I don't even know who belongs to who. Like, and why do these guys all look the same? Like that must have been, she's an only child. It must have been very overwhelming for her. And so she starts out and she kind of gets on the ride. I always think of his family as like a freight train. She gets on the ride. And then once she's kind of on it and she's kind of just in the spirit of the evening, there's something there for her. And she's interested.
Yeah. And she has this friend, Clem, who's sort of her roommate, her best friend, this person that she really leans on and stands on. Why was it important for you to also include this really strong female friendship for Jane?
I always think it's important in a story. When I start writing a story, I usually just write two people, and then I go back in and they have siblings and families and friends and all this stuff. But everybody needs a friend. And I think that a person like Jane, if she didn't have a friend, she would really be in a bad spot. And so Clem is kind of, is the person who actually does have confidence in her and who does see her worthiness and who does sort of, in a very patient way, I think, not, the friend who's always telling you what you should do. She's not like that. She's kind of waiting for her to open up about herself and to understand, who she is. And I think it ended up being a really important part of the book because I don't know how Jane would have stood on her own.
Yeah, I certainly agree. She had her mom, but there's something different about Clem and their relationship and how she could really lean on her in so many different ways. What was your writing process like for this book?
Oh, it's just chaos, bananas, chaos. Like it would make you cry if you had sat through it. I mean, I always write a story in a totally chaotic way. I just sit down and write it and I don't know where the story is going to go. I wrote 2 drafts of this story with the pop star that they're going after was a woman that was not known to Jane. And the story wasn't working. And then I started over again with the whole Jack Quinlan and the past and the whole thing. I rewrote this book more than any of the books that I've ever written.
Wow.
This was the most complicated one.
And when did you start? And then when was your final draft submitted?
I started in August of the year before, and I finished in October. So this is the book that took me, actually, I write a book every year. So by definition, I should only take a year to write a book. This one took me a couple months longer to get right.
Yeah. What, you mentioned you went to business school. I understand you were in investment banking, correct? Before you became now a full-time author. How did you make that switch?
Yes, I should really do career counseling. It's like,
can you
what
help
is
me?
the matter with you? Like, this makes no sense. And anytime people read my intro, if they have all that stuff in it, I get so many weird looks from the audience. Like, what is she doing? Anyway, so I always wanted to be a writer, always, but I didn't know how I would ever support myself as a writer, which is a valid concern. I went to Wall Street after college. I went to business school. I came out, I worked in investment banking, and I was terrible at it. Like, I hated it. And I hated it. And also I wasn't good at it. So I was married and I got pregnant, and I was like, oh, I think I'm pregnant now. I'm not going to do this job anymore. So I quit. And then I was at home with children, with 3 children, until I was 37. And then wrote the first thing I ever published. So if you think that it's too late to start doing something. Oh, and then frankly, the first thing I ever wrote that anybody liked, I was 50 when I wrote that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just, it took a long time.
And what did you write when you were 50 that you said that was the first thing anybody...
Nora Goes Off Script.
Oh, okay.
That was the first book that I wrote.
Okay.
Yeah, that anybody read. I wrote 2 young adult books in my 30s that were fun, but like not that many people read them, but they were very fun to write.
What do you think made the difference going from the YA books to going to the book about Nora?
Time, frankly, and just readiness. It's a very vulnerable thing to write a book. You tell a story, but really you're just sharing a lot about your worldview and how you feel about things. In books like these, it's like how you feel about being a mother, how you feel about being married, living in a family, having children. And I don't know that I was ready to do that until I was 50.
Wow. What is your favorite thing about writing now?
Everything. It's just such a weird thing. It's my job, right? And I would do it for free. But getting up in the morning, I get up really early with my dog and my coffee and a candle in the dark. And I just have this space with myself for a couple hours to write before anybody else wakes up. It's really joyful. And it's really joyful to find out after a while that you're not running out of things. Like, there's more. There's always more stories to tell, and there's always more layers to add to a story. Mm-hmm. It feels very abundant.
Yeah. Do you have a particular place that you write? Like, do you have a spot that you need to sit in, or are you pretty open? Is the whole house fair game for you?
I used to. I was telling you before I sold my house last summer. So I used to have a very specific spot that I was quite superstitious about. Like, that's my chair. It's my mom's chair. It's where I write. And now I'm living in 2 places. And frankly, it's like half the time I write at the library. And when we're in Florida, there's this fancy hotel next door to me. Yeah. And I go right in their lobby because there's tea and they have fresh flowers. It's like really nice. So now it's kind of like anything goes.
Yeah. I know you're getting ready to go on a book tour for It's a Love Story. What is it like for you to meet your readers in person and get to hear from them?
It's like, it's unbelievable. It's, book tour is basically waking up every day and going to the airport. Like, my schedule says 5 a.m. car pickup every single day. You go to the airport, you get to the city, you go to your hotel, and you're like kind of confused and tired. You get to the event that night, and it's literally like your birthday party. Like, everybody's excited to be there. Everybody's a reader. Everybody has something to say. It's like nobody goes to book events that don't want to be there.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it's like a whole room full of joyful people. But then add to that the fact that you thought something in your head and you typed it, and then now they have it in their head and they want to talk about it. It is just like, it's the most intimate thing to meet those people. It's the best part of the year.
That sounds like the best. You get 15, 16 birthday parties. People get to
That's right.
talk people get to talk to you about your book. Do a lot of the folks there, have they gotten early copies? Have they already read them? Are they asking you questions about what to expect? Kind of how does that work?
That's a great question. It depends. Like, so the first three events are the first couple of days. And a lot of people have had early copies, but other people are, excited to get their copy on that day. By the end of the week and a half, more people have already read it. And then it turns into more of a discussion. So you got to keep spoilers out. But yeah, anything goes. I always ask at the beginning, like, who's read the book? So that I know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. How soon are you going to start working on your next book? Because it's something that you're already working on right now.
Yeah. So the way it works, if you live by my clock, which is bananas, I will finish my 2026 book by the end of this summer. So I am on a third draft of that book. And I'll be working on that while I'm on tour, and I'll be working on that during the summer.
What do you do for fun when you're not having to work?
I just don't know if this is healthy. Writing's the most fun thing I do.
Okay. Well, I love that. You love what you do.
I know, it really is. The rest of the time, I walk my dog with my husband. I see my friends. I don't play any sports or games, like no pickleball, no mahjong, none of that. I basically just hang around and drink wine with my friends.
I love that. That sounds like the best.
It's not bad.
What advice do you have for women who may be at a point where they want to switch careers? Maybe it's late in life and they feel like, oh, I've passed the point of getting to do something new.
Yeah. God, there are no guarantees. But I personally think that I am so much more qualified now than I was when I was 30 to do anything, right? Like, so you've had some life and you've learned so much stuff, and you think that you can't do the next thing because you didn't start doing it when you were 25, but you're so far ahead with all of your life experience that you're bringing more to the party than you think you are. There's a wisdom that comes from that you learn in any job, and you can just move it forward to the next thing. I also think that, for a lot of us, we were raised thinking that you had to do one thing and then the next thing, and there's a path. I don't think that exists anymore. Like, when I see my kids in their jobs, the job they're going to have in 10 years hasn't even been invented yet. Mm-hmm. So, like, why not just try something new? It's what everybody's doing.
Mm-hmm. I think when you work for so long at something, it also is hard because it becomes part of your identity. I feel like people that are in their 20s and 30s definitely struggle with that too, if they're looking to try something different.
It's their identity. And also, you've invested a lot in it, right? You've become an expert in accounting. And maybe you don't like accounting anymore, but you're like, God, I spent so much time understanding that. But I just don't think that any learning is wasted. I mean, I have an MBA. You think I like buying and selling companies? Nope.
Did you have any formal training, or did you take any writing classes once you decided that this is what you wanted to do full time?
I wrote a first draft of my first young adult novel and then signed up for a writing class so that I could workshop it. And then a couple of years later, it was published. And then I started teaching that writing class. So I was an English major in college, so I took writing then. But frankly, everything that I know about writing, I know from reading. Yeah. I think that reading, particularly young people, like reading as many books as you can is the best training for being a writer that you can possibly have. Because the way stories go, just like that, there's like a musical rhythm to them. If you have that in the back of your head, it really helps you create a plot.
Speaking of reading, I did read that you read Pride and Prejudice every year.
I'm behind on that. That's on my website. I don't think I've read it in 2 years, but for a long time, I read that book every year. There's something about it. It's like mashed potatoes. It is so comforting to me, and it's so funny. And it's like sneaks up on you the way it's funny. I don't know, it just makes me feel good.
Do you have any other books that you love? Do you have any other authors that are auto read authors for you?
Oh, lots. So I really love to read thrillers and murdery books. Like the murderier, the better. I love Elizabeth George, who writes crime. I love Lisa Jewell. Both of these women are English. And those are my crime people. And then for, in my genre, it's everybody that everybody reads. I read all of them. You give me Emily Henry, I'll take her all day. I've got her new book on my Kindle and in hardcover. I'm like all over it.
Do you usually have a Kindle and then an actual physical copy of a book to read at once?
I do, because it's not cost efficient, but I like the book and I like reading the book, but I don't always want to be carrying around a giant book if I'm traveling. So I end up buying books twice.
And this sounds so silly, and I don't really like to even say this aloud to a lot of people, but it's so much easier to go to bed with a Kindle than it is with an actual physical book. Like, I can get really cozy with my little Kindle, like lying there, but with an actual with a hardcover book or a paperback book, it's a lot harder to do that.
No, that's 100% true. That is 100% true. Yeah.
And then you don't have to turn the light on and off because you just have your Kindle.
That's right. And you can prop it up on your pillow.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah,
on my husband's pillow, not mine.
Yeah, that's the least silly thing I've ever heard.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, good. It's a love story out now. Anything else you want readers to know as they head out to pick up your new book?
More information on my tour, because I'm going to be traveling by the time you hear this, is on my website, annabelmonaghan.com/events. I would love to see you. And I hope I'm excited to hear what readers say. So far, it's connecting with people. So I'm really excited.
I love that. Anything that you've heard from readers that's really stood out to you, or what's been your favorite thing you've heard so far about the book?
I have been surprised at how well people are relating to Janie Jakes. And I have been surprised at how many people have struggled with the variety of things that she struggled with in her life. It seems to be a set of things where people don't quite understand their value, and like their place in the world, their worthiness to be in the world. And for some, that is, sadly, it's a relatable thing. And it, the way it all turns out is very hopeful. So hopefully that's helpful.
It definitely is. It was such a cute book. I love Jane. I love Dan and his family. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Whitney. This was so fun.
Okay.